The Aldor fleet descended like a storm, a massive armada that blotted out the stars above Earth's skies. For years, humanity had only dreamed of what lay beyond their planet, but nothing had prepared them for this, an alien invasion of a scale never seen before. The initial waves of Aldor warships unleashed a torrent of firepower, pounding Earth's defenses with relentless precision. The once proud world stood defiant but outmatched, as cities fell under a hail of plasma and laser fire, their skyscrapers collapsing like fragile towers of sand. The human race, for all its technological advancements, was a single planet, vulnerable, fragile in the face of a galactic empire. Yet, what the Aldor didn't expect was the human response. General Marcus Cole, a veteran of countless battles in Earth's military history, was in the thick of it from the moment the first blast hit. A born leader with a mind sharp as a blade, Cole had prepared for years for an attack that many thought would never come. His strategy had been simple: train for the worst, hope for the best. And now, the worst had arrived. He gathered his forces quickly, rallying soldiers, civilians, and local militias into a single united front. "We don't run, we don't hide," he told them over comms as the skies crackled with incoming enemy fire. "We stand and fight. It's our home, and we're not giving it up without a fight." From the moment the Aldor's first strike hit, it was clear they had no idea what kind of enemy they had just woken up. Their first landing forces met with savage resistance in the streets of New York, where human soldiers, armed with little more than small arms and makeshift explosives, set up ambushes. The Aldor, large and intimidating in their reptilian glory, had the upper hand in numbers and technology, but they were arrogant. The human resistance, though far fewer in number, fought with a tenacity the Aldor had never experienced. Every corner was a death trap. Every alleyway, a kill zone. Each human soldier, no matter their rank, was willing to die to protect their home. At first, the Aldor mocked them, these small, fragile creatures who dared to resist the might of an empire thousands of years old. But as the days dragged on, their contempt began to fade. The alien invaders had expected a quick victory, earth-shattering weaponry, overwhelming numbers, and a population that would crumble under the weight of their superior forces. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's ability to adapt. Dr. Evan Shaw, a brilliant scientist turned strategist, quickly identified the flaw in their approach. "They're predictable," she said, speaking into the emergency comms. "We can use their arrogance against them." With limited resources, Shaw worked alongside Earth's top engineers to devise new technologies based on captured Aldor gear, making weapons that could counteract their opponent's overwhelming advantage. What humans lacked in brute force, they would make up for in ingenuity. And most importantly, in the strength of their will to survive. The first battle ended in a stalemate. Humanity's first victory. The first major engagement ended not in the catastrophic defeat the Aldor had predicted, but in a strange, unspoken draw. Their landing zones were compromised, their supply lines shattered, and their soldiers now faced a relentless guerrilla war, one they weren't equipped to fight. For the first time in centuries, the Aldor felt doubt creeping into their once immovable confidence. General Marcus Cole knew this wasn't over. He had watched human resilience in action for years, but even he was stunned by the tenacity of the civilians now joining the fight. From the first days of the invasion, the military had requisitioned every scrap of weaponry, every tank, every fighter jet in the arsenal. But it wasn't enough. What would have been a routine planetary conquest for the Aldor had become a protracted, bloody struggle. This wasn't just a war of firepower. It was a war of will. Cole didn't waste time. He issued a new order to his commanders. Conventional tactics won't work against them. We fight dirty. We hit hard, we strike fast, and we leave nothing behind. Earth's military became a living, breathing weapon. People from all walks of life turned soldiers. Farmers used plows to make makeshift tanks. Mechanics welded scrap metal together into armor-piercing defenses. The most powerful army in the galaxy was now forced to fight against an enemy they couldn't predict, couldn't control, and couldn't overpower. Dr. Even Shaw and her team of engineers worked tirelessly in the chaos. With the remnants of a destroyed Aldor landing craft, Shaw reverse-engineered their weaponry. Soon, Earth's forces were armed with plasma rifles that rivaled the invaders' own, and their spacecraft were retrofitted with shields and weaponry that allowed them to engage Aldar warships head-to-head. But it wasn't just the technology that made the difference, it was the human mind. Shaw recognized patterns, the subtle cues that betrayed the Aldar's next move. A miscalculation in their movements, a sign of weakness. These were the moments humanity would exploit. But the war was still young, and the invaders were not easily deterred. They came with overwhelming numbers, and their fleets in orbit were constantly replenishing their forces. The Aldor retaliated with brutal counterattacks, leveling entire cities to punish humanity's resistance. Earth's populations were forced into hiding, living off the grid, fighting from the shadows. The civilians in the underground bunkers and rural hideaways became the backbone of the resistance. It was not just the military now. It was every man, woman, and child who fought to protect their home. In the midst of the chaos, General Cole's forces delivered their first crushing blow. Using a strategy they had perfected in the urban ruins of New York, they launched a multi-pronged counteroffensive that trapped a key Aldor battalion in the heart of Chicago. The battle raged for days, with humans sneaking through tunnels and ambushing the reptilian invaders at every turn. When it was over, the Aldor were forced to retreat in shame. Their forces crippled, their morale shattered. Humanity's defiance had become undeniable. Earth was still standing, and the Aldor had not yet broken them. As the war raged on Earth, something unexpected began to happen. News of humanity's fierce resistance spread across the galaxy, carried by the countless interstellar broadcasts that streamed through the depths of space. The galaxy's most powerful empires, each of which had long dismissed Earth as insignificant, began to take notice. The Aldar, once the dominant force in the galaxy, were faltering. Their once unstoppable war machine had met a force that couldn't be beaten with firepower alone. And that was something the galaxy's other species couldn't ignore. The Sarnai, a highly advanced and pacifist race, sent emissaries to observe Earth. The Zarkel, a brutal and militaristic species, began whispering about the humans, wondering if their famed warrior spirit could be turned into an ally or a threat. The Hari, a technologically gifted but emotionally volatile species, sought to understand what drove the human mind to fight when there was no hope. Human resistance was no longer a footnote in galactic history. It was a phenomenon. Earth was a symbol of defiance, a glimmer of hope to the oppressed, and a challenge to every empire that prided itself on dominance. On Earth, Dr. Even Shaw and her team began to realize something even more alarming. This war had become something much bigger than a planetary struggle. Humanity had inadvertently become the center of a galactic spotlight. Dr. Shaw was constantly in contact with off-world researchers who were studying humanity's tactics and psychological fortitude, both of which were as alien to most galactic species as Earth's fauna. "They're not just watching us," Shaw told General Cole during one tense briefing. "They're learning from us. The galaxy is looking to see what happens next." And then came the first diplomatic envoy. The Sarnai sent a delegation of diplomats and scientists, eager to meet with the humans, to understand how this tiny, insignificant species had held its ground against the might of the Aldor. The Sarnai were not interested in war. They were researchers, philosophers, builders, but they knew that if humanity could face down an empire like the Aldars, then their potential was something the galaxy needed to understand. General Cole and Dr. Shaw were both cautious. They knew the Sarnai were not enemies, but in the midst of a war they couldn't afford to trust anyone outside of their own kind. Still, Cole agreed to meet with them, recognizing that Earth's survival might depend on gaining allies. "We got something they don't have," Cole said bluntly. "A way of thinking they'll never understand. We adapt. We fight to survive, not for glory, not for conquest. When you have nothing left, you fight like there's no tomorrow. The Sarnay listened, fascinated, as humanity's unlikely resolve unfolded before them. They had expected humans to break by now. Instead, they saw a race capable of turning the tide of war with sheer grit and ingenuity. What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The war against the Aldar was far from over, and humanity was already thinking 5 steps ahead. They had learned that their greatest weapon was not their weapons, but their ability to outthink their enemies. And with the galaxy watching, humanity was about to change the game forever. By the time Earth had survived its first wave of Aldar assaults, something profound began to change. The humans had not only endured, they had adapted. Every city the Aldar raised had become a school of warfare. Every lost battle had taught humanity something invaluable about their enemies' weaknesses, their methods of attack, their patterns. It was these lessons, coupled with the sheer will of the human spirit, that would soon tip the scales in their favor. The Aldar, growing frustrated by their inability to crush the human resistance, decided to escalate. In an act of desperation, they deployed their ultimate weapon, the Tsother Dreadnought, a massive planet-killing warship capable of reducing Earth's surface to a molten wasteland in a single devastating blast. Its weapon systems were unmatched, and its shields were said to be impregnable. With the Dreadnought in orbit, the Aldar expected the war to end quickly. Once the humans saw the enormity of the threat, they would surely surrender. But General Marcus Cole, ever the strategist, saw it differently. The Dreadnought, despite its power, was not invincible. It had a flaw, a blind spot in its energy shield that humans had detected through careful analysis of the Aldar's earlier strikes. Cole's plan was simple: disrupt the Dreadnought's power systems, and with the shield down, Earth's forces could launch a direct strike. It was a long shot, almost suicidal, but it was their only hope. Working alongside Dr. Evan Shaw and a handful of her brightest engineers, Cole devised a plan to infiltrate the Dreadnought using a team of elite soldiers. Shaw had already made key breakthroughs in reverse engineering the Aldar's technology, and with their expertise, they managed to create a small but powerful stealth craft capable of slipping past the Aldar's detection systems. But time was running out. Earth's forces had to strike before the Aldar could initiate their final bombardment. The mission would take place under the cover of night, with the stealth team infiltrating Aldar territory in a daring assault. It would be a two-pronged operation. One team would create a diversion by sabotaging the Aldar's ground forces, while the other would board the Dreadnought, disable its power systems, and bring down its shields. The plan hinged on split-second timing. One mistake, and the entire human resistance could be wiped out. As Cole stood in front of his assembled team of soldiers, each one prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, he gave them one final order: you're not fighting for Earth alone. You're fighting for every world the Aldar will destroy if we fail, for every species they've enslaved, for every innocent life they've taken. We are the wall. We are the last line of defense. The team launched at first light, slipping through the chaos of war like ghosts in the dark. For hours, their stealth craft maneuvered through Aldar blockade zones, dodging patrols and evading orbital scans. The tension was palpable, but there was no turning back now. When they finally breached the Dreadnought's outer defenses and infiltrated its hull, the battle inside was nothing short of a nightmare. The Aldar, stunned by the breach, retaliated with everything they had, but the humans were relentless. They fought their way to the heart of the Dreadnought's control room, where the final confrontation would decide the fate of Earth. In the end, it wasn't brute strength that won the day, it was human ingenuity. A carefully placed explosive took down the Dreadnought's power grid, sending shockwaves through the entire ship. The shield generators went dark, and the Aldar found themselves exposed for the first time. Earth's fleet, waiting in orbit, moved in for the kill. With one coordinated strike, they shattered the Aldar Dreadnought, leaving it as nothing more than a smoldering wreck in space. The Aldor were stunned, humiliated. For the first time, the mighty empire realized they had underestimated humanity. Earth, against all odds, had delivered the first crushing blow. But as the final explosion echoed in the void, General Cole knew this was only the beginning. The war was far from over. The Aldor would come back stronger, angrier, and humanity would need to be ready. The victory, while significant, only deepened the resolve of the humans. If they could defeat the seemingly invincible dreadnought, there was no challenge too great for them. Earth was no longer the victim. It was a force to be reckoned with. And the galaxy was watching. The destruction of the Sothar dreadnought sent shockwaves across the galaxy, and the Aldor Empire, for the first time in centuries, felt the sting of defeat. Their once impregnable dominance was no more. The survivors of the dreadnought's destruction limped back to Aldar-controlled space, broken and demoralized, while the remaining forces on Earth reeled from the sheer scale of their victory. For General Marcus Cole, however, the taste of triumph was bittersweet. The battle had been hard won, but it had cost them dearly. Cities had been burned, families lost, and Earth's resources stretched to the breaking point. The Aldor had underestimated humanity's capacity to fight back, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Cole knew the next phase of the war would be even bloodier. Back on Earth, Dr. Evan Shaw had her own concerns. The sudden burst of technological ingenuity had propelled humanity into an entirely new league, but it had also drawn the attention of other galactic powers. The Sarnay were the first to offer a form of diplomatic contact, sending a small fleet of unarmed ships to Earth's orbit. They were curious, fascinated, even, by the humans' unexpected resilience. Their delegation brought not only words of support but an offer. A treaty that would provide humanity with advanced technology, medical aid, and political protection from the other galactic empires. But Shaw didn't trust it. She knew the galaxy's politics too well. As much as they admired humanity's courage, the Sarnay weren't offering assistance out of altruism. They saw potential that could tip the balance of power across the stars. They had studied human psychology, analyzed the way humans adapted to impossible odds, and recognized the terrifying possibility that humanity, if left unchecked, could challenge the stability of the galaxy itself. "This is about power, not peace," Shaw said to General Cole during their private meeting. "The Sarnay want humanity as a tool, not an ally." Cole nodded, rubbing his temples. He had seen this coming. The galaxy was full of empires that had grown complacent with their power, and they were wary of humanity's sudden rise. But the real danger, Cole knew, was not in the Sarnay's offer. It was in the reaction of the other empires, especially the Triveran Collective, a ruthless coalition of species known for their militaristic ways. The Collective had been watching Earth's victories from afar, but they didn't view the humans with awe. They viewed them with fear. The Triveran believed that no species could disrupt the galaxy's balance without severe consequences. They were already planning their response, a coordinated invasion of Earth's colonies, designed to crush humanity's momentum before it could truly take hold. And so, while Earth's people celebrated their hard-won victory, the storm clouds of war gathered once more. The Aldor were reeling, but not defeated. The Sarnay were watching, calculating, waiting, and the Triveran were preparing to strike, determined to put an end to humanity's rise before it could disrupt their carefully constructed dominance. Humanity had proven it could fight, but now it would have to fight not just for its survival, but for its place in the galaxy. The galaxy was watching, and for the first time in history, it feared what humanity could become. The galaxy's uneasy peace was shattered when the Triveran Collective launched its first wave of attacks on Earth's outer colonies. With swift, coordinated precision, the Collective descended on worlds like Dardanus, Coloris, and Vecta, all critical to humanity's burgeoning interstellar presence. These worlds, barely developed, were no match for the overwhelming might of the Triveran warships and their brutal, relentless tactics. The Collective's goal was clear: eradicate humanity's influence before it could spread any further. Humanity, still reeling from the loss of major cities during the Aldor invasion, was caught off guard. The Triveran fleet was vast, their war machines highly advanced, and their forces merciless. Earth's defenses, still focused on protecting their homeworld, were spread thin across the colonies. The war had escalated quickly, and humanity was being pushed to its breaking point. General Cole knew that Earth's immediate survival was no longer the top priority. To fight on two fronts was a gamble, but the alternative was extinction. The Triveran weren't just attacking colonies, they were sending a message to every galactic empire. Humanity is a threat that must be crushed. In the war rooms of Earth's command center, Cole convened with his closest advisors. The Sarnai had offered their technological advancements, but the general had learned enough about their motives to be wary. They were too diplomatic, too distant. Instead, Cole focused on Earth's own military potential, refining tactics that had proven successful against the Aldor, and adapting them to deal with a new enemy, the Triveran Collective. Captain Kate Bennett, a brilliant strategist with experience in both planetary defense and deep space combat, was appointed to lead the counteroffensive on Earth's colonies. She and her team developed a series of devastating guerrilla tactics, relying on speed, surprise, and sabotage to slow the Triveran advance. The collective was technologically superior, but the humans had learned to fight not just with weapons, but with their environment. Meanwhile, Dr. Shaw, who had worked tirelessly to reverse engineer alien technologies, unlocked a new breakthrough: pulse disruptors. These weapons, designed to target the energy cores of enemy ships, were humanity's answer to the Triveran's technological superiority. Shaw's team worked around the clock to mass-produce the devices, hoping that these weapons would tip the balance in their favor. With the pulse disruptors ready, Captain Bennett led a daring strike against the Triveran's flagship in the Dardanus system. The operation was nothing short of suicidal. Taking on a fleet that had decimated human outposts across the galaxy seemed like a death sentence. But Bennett was a master of unconventional warfare. She used the Triveran's overconfidence against them, infiltrating their ranks and disabling their defenses before the enemy even knew what hit them. The humans didn't just fight back. They struck with an intensity and ferocity that stunned the Triveran. With their flagship crippled, the collective was forced to retreat, their plans to crush humanity's colonies thrown into disarray. It wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Humanity was not just surviving the war, it was thriving. Earth was becoming a force to be reckoned with, and the Triveran, once confident in their overwhelming power, now realized they had made a grave mistake. But the war was far from over. The Sarnai, the Aldor, and now the Triveran, every empire in the galaxy was watching, and humanity's reputation was spreading like wildfire. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. The question was, how far would they go, and how much would the galaxy be willing to risk to stop them? The fight for survival had turned into a fight for dominance, and humanity had no intention of losing. Humanity's rise had turned the tide of the war, but it had also drawn the ire of the galaxy's most powerful empires. While Earth's forces dealt crippling blows to the Triveran Collective, and the Aldor licked their wounds, there was a far darker, more insidious force waiting in the wings. The Zarkel, an ancient and bloodthirsty empire with a reputation for devouring worlds, had been observing humanity's ascent with growing concern. Their leaders saw humanity not as a challenge to their territorial ambitions, but as a potential threat to their very existence. The Zarkel were predators, and they feared the humans could become their hunters. Behind the scenes, the Zarkel began to conspire with the Aldor, seeking to forge an alliance that would crush humanity once and for all. They sent emissaries to Earth's former invaders, offering them new weapons and technologies that could break human defenses. The Zarkel were as cunning as they were brutal, and their knowledge of galactic warfare was unparalleled. Together, the two species began to form an alliance that would change the course of the war. On Earth, General Marcus Cole, and Dr. Even Shaw were already aware of the shifting tides. The humans had learned to fight in ways no one expected, but now they were facing an enemy that would not only fight with advanced weaponry, but would do so with ruthless efficiency. The Zarkel's reputation as conquerors, known for their scorched earth tactics and unrelenting wars of extermination, struck fear into the hearts of even the most seasoned soldiers. General Cole, however, was not a man to be intimidated. He had seen humanity's potential and understood one key thing that the galaxy's empires had yet to grasp. Humanity was not just a warrior race. It was a race of survivors. While the Aldor and the Triveran were focused on brute strength and overwhelming firepower, humanity had learned to outthink and outmaneuver its enemies. And in that moment, Cole realized it wasn't just strength that would win the war. It was cunning. Dr. Shaw had been working on something that could change everything. The Orbital Nexus Network, a communications and defense system capable of outsmarting even the most sophisticated alien technologies. With the help of humanity's greatest minds, she had developed a way to jam and confuse enemy communications, disrupting their coordinated attacks and leaving their fleets vulnerable. It was a bold plan, a gamble, but it was humanity's best shot at winning the war. The Zarkel, however, were no fools. They anticipated that humanity would fight back in unexpected ways. The Nexus Network, while powerful, was still in its infancy. The Zarkel had their own plans to counteract humanity's ingenuity, and they had a weapon unlike any other, a device that could shut down entire planetary systems by harnessing the raw energy of a star. The Zarkel called it the Vortex Cannon, and it was designed to wipe out any species that posed a threat to their supremacy. As the final battle approached, General Cole and Dr. Shaw knew that time was running out. The Zarkel and Aldor were preparing for an assault unlike any humanity had ever faced, a full-scale invasion that could decimate Earth and its colonies in one fell swoop. The stakes had never been higher. Humanity had won many battles, but this was the war to end all wars. To survive, humanity would have to do what it had always done best: adapt, survive, and fight harder than ever before. It was no longer about defending Earth. It was about proving that humanity was not just the galaxy's most fearsome warrior species, but that no force, no empire, no power could ever crush the indomitable spirit of mankind. The galaxy had underestimated them once, and they would never make that mistake again. The day the Zarkel's Vortex Cannon arrived in orbit, humanity knew the stakes had reached their apex. Earth's skies darkened as the massive planet-killing device took position. The weapon harnessed the energy of a dying star, capable of unleashing a destructive wave that could obliterate everything in its path. A single shot was all it would take to reduce Earth to rubble. The Zarkel had made their intentions clear. Humanity's defiance would end today. General Marcus Cole stood at the command center, his face grim as he looked at the holographic displays showing the Vortex Cannon's trajectory. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice unwavering despite the gravity of the situation. "This isn't just about saving Earth anymore. It's about proving to the galaxy that we won't be erased." Dr. Even Shaw's hands moved swiftly across her console, calculating the timing for the final phase of the Orbital Nexus Network activation. The Nexus, humanity's last-ditch effort to disrupt enemy systems, was the key. The Zarkel were aware of the Nexus, but they underestimated its potential. Shaw had been working with the remnants of the Triveran and Aldor technologies, creating an adaptive countermeasure that would target the Vortex Cannon systems, using its own energy against it. But there was a catch. Activating the Nexus would mean a massive strain on Earth's resources, and it would only function for a short window. If they failed to destroy the cannon in that time, Earth was finished. Cole turned to Captain Kate Bennett, who had led the successful counterattacks against the Triveran. "Get the fleet ready. If Shaw's plan works, we have one shot. Take it. No second chances." Bennett nodded, her expression hardening. "Understood, sir." The countdown to the Vortex Cannon's first firing began. A deep, thunderous rumble echoed from the sky as its energy coils charged, casting an eerie glow across Earth's surface. On the ground, Earth's resistance forces were preparing for the worst, organizing civilians into evacuation zones, while soldiers gathered for what might be their final stand. Shaw activated the Nexus network. Instantly, the cannon's targeting systems began to flicker, its energy shields destabilizing as human-engineered signals flooded its systems. The Vortex cannon's mechanism struggled to adapt, caught in a battle it had no hope of winning. The energy readings on Shaw's monitor spiked. If they were going to take the shot, it had to be now. In orbit, Bennett's fleet, consisting of retrofitted Earth ships, patched together with scavenged alien technology, launched their assault. With the Nexus holding the cannon systems in disarray, the fleet moved in for a coordinated strike, hitting the weapon's power core with everything they had. Explosions rang out, bright flashes of light tearing through the vastness of space. Then, at the heart of the battle, the unimaginable happened. A massive, pulsing burst of energy erupted from the Vortex cannon, a final act of desperation. But it was too late. The Nexus had done its job. The weapon's core ruptured, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The Vortex cannon, the most formidable weapon ever created by the Zarkel, was no more. The shockwave from the explosion reverberated across the battlefield. Earth's fleet, battered but victorious, pushed the remaining Zarkel and Aldor forces into retreat. The once feared empire, crippled by their own weapon, was now on the defensive, and humanity had proved they could withstand the galaxy's deadliest weapons and rise again. As General Cole watched the fading remnants of the Zarkel fleet disappear into the void, a sense of disbelief washed over him. The war was over. Earth had survived, and humanity had emerged as the victors, not just against the Aldor, the Triveran, or the Zarkel, but against the very forces that sought to erase them from the stars. The galaxy would never see humanity as weak again. They had become something more than just a fearsome warrior species. They had become a force for change. The empires of the galaxy would have to reckon with that truth from now on. Humanity, for all its flaws, had proved one irrefutable fact. When pushed to the edge, when faced with extinction, humanity would fight, and it would always find a way to win.